All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome back to another Wake Up with YPN. I'm Jonathan Fell, Vice Chair of your Iowa City YPN. And today we are talking all about winterizing properties, whether that's your property, your home property, within reason, helping, or maybe you have a vacant property, you just need to make sure stays safe over the winter months. We are covering everything we need to know, or at least a good chunk of everything we need to know about winterizing our properties. And with us today, we have Mike Tomash and he's going to help us figure some of this out and give us some tips for the best practices, as I should say. So before we officially begin, I want to encourage anyone who's watching to send us your questions. That really helps us engage Mike and all of us to get a better sense of what we need to get out of this topic today. So please don't hesitate to send in your questions as you watch this morning. So without further ado, Mike, welcome. Would you mind giving us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and
No,
your
that's
background?
fine, Jonathan. My name's Mike Tomash, for those that don't know me. I retired as a home inspector after 16 years in May of this year. So I'm here just trying to give a little something back. This isn't about me. This is about hopefully helping you folks out. Just a little background on myself. I graduated Clear Creek, Amana, which was Clear Creek, back in 1976. I graduated a day early, or a year early, rather.
Good for
I
you.
went to Kirkwood and quit by lunchtime the first day. I wasn't sure what school was going to do for me. At that point in my life, my goals were to have fast cars, parties, and chase the girls, and I knew I needed to support my habits. So I got into the construction industry right away. I went to work for Swartz and Druber Lumber, which is no longer in the business, but they still have their lumber yard there just across the Iowa County line on Highway 6. Because I wasn't 18 until October of that year, I had to ride around on the truck and help with deliveries and such like that. So that kind of got me going in the carpenter end of it. I've been a member of Carpenters Local 1260 here in Iowa City since 1977. I worked as a field carpenter for about 15 and a half years there. The business agent, who was one of my best friends, decided to step down and encouraged me to go after the position, which I really didn't want to do until I started seeing some of the people that were throwing their name in the hat. And I think they were just looking for what I would call an easy job, which was not any easy job by any stretch of the imagination. So I ran the local here for 5.5 years. I was then an organizing director for 18 counties in Northwest Illinois, all of Iowa, all of Nebraska, and kind of got on the wrong side of politics there. And to me, there's a difference between being a team player and a lapdog. And I've always held myself to a pretty strong conviction that right's right and wrong is wrong. So I was dismissed from my duties there. We got thrown in with the Chicago District Council at that time. I reapplied, came back to work as an organizer, and to me, the mission wasn't there. So I put my tools back on, and that's my 30 years in Carpenter retirement fund. And that's when I decided to make a move and got into the home inspection business. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, and where my career's been. Basically, I look at whether I was swinging a hammer representing carpenters or inspected homes. My whole life has revolved around the construction industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just shows what of a great wealth of knowledge you have and bring for us today. And, getting into that topic of winterizing homes, I'm sure that you've seen a lot in your time from the proactive and the reactive standpoint of what has to happen either before something goes wrong or after something goes wrong. Is there any stories that you might be able to share with us, or some issues that you've run across as a home inspector in years past?
Oh, you always run into some dandy stuff. The time you think that you've seen it all, brace yourself, because you certainly have it. I can remember one time I was supposed to be. I called the showing desk, and this was in the Cedar Rapids market. Oh yeah, fine. Monday morning, great. Sellers are gone, out of town, and so I thought, well, heck, I'm going to start a little bit early. And it started looking a little suspicious when I went up to knock on the door. I saw a woman's purse sitting on the table, and that was the first red flag. And I knocked, and nobody answered, so I got the key from the lockbox and opened up the door and did my usual, hello, anybody home? Home inspector, anybody here? Well, of course, nobody answered. So I proceeded to bring in a couple bags of tools, my laptop, and pretty soon here comes a guy around the corner. What the F are you doing in my house? And it was not the way to start a Monday morning. We got it all ironed out and things were fine. A couple other things that kind of crossed my mind is, and I'm going to touch on wood sash windows a little bit, but opening up a wood sash window and having the bottom rail and the glass fall out of them from deterioration, that's not a fun thing to experience. Another time I slipped in an attic and pretty much tore my left shoulder up pretty bad. And I caught myself so I wouldn't be talking in soprano today. One of the, and then of course you've got to make that call to that listing agent. And to me, this was one of the classiest things anybody in the real estate agent or business has ever said to me. When I explained to her what had happened, instead of going into a tirade and that, her first question was, "Are you okay?" So I've really enjoyed this business. I've really enjoyed my customers, the people that I've worked around. I felt that I've probably worked around one of the most diverse groups of people I've ever been around in my life, and I've been around a lot and been around a lot of people. So that's kind of, I'll just stop the sharing at that right now.
Sure. Yeah. No. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we would love to hear some maybe rules of thumb you've come up with over the years that you could share with our realtor members to avoid common issues. I have a few categories that come to mind, but maybe first let's talk about inside the home.
Yeah.
What are some things? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to say one more thing that, when I started in this business, there was still a lot of animosity towards home inspectors. And, we're going to be partners in this thing, whether people like it or not. I've seen a lot of that stuff start to go away. One of the biggest things that I have seen that is sometimes agents not educating their clients on the whole process of buying or selling a home, or the process of the inspections. So I do have a little one-page thing here, a seller's checklist for home inspections. And I've already given that to Anna, and anybody that would like to see that, I think it's a nice little one-page document that will help take away a lot of problems sometimes. Just contact Anna here at the association. She'll be able to get that out to you. So
that's awesome. Thank you, Mike.
We'll get back on track here. I just want to touch on a few things on the inside of the home.
Sure.
One of the first ones being wooden sash, sometimes metal clad, sometimes not windows. Some of the earlier metal clad windows had poor designs on their metal cladding on the exterior, and the factory sealant would wear out. And, if people didn't open their windows, if they didn't clean their sashes, their window troughs annually, and take a look at their sealant and update that. I mean, a lot of these windows could like the one I opened up and the bottom rail and the window fell out. There's a lot of deterioration issues with windows. So one of the things I think an agent should do is, maybe run around, while they're doing that listing process or something, maybe just, if you got wood sash windows, just lift them, take a peek. if you're seeing black stains on the bottom rail of that window, it means that it's either had water wick up through it, or it's currently having water wick up to it. Now, the one thing about the black, I mean, you can catch a window early. You can get it before the deterioration and the moisture gets too bad in it. But even when you revarnish or restain, that black is always going to come through. So that's not necessarily always a sign that your window is rotten, but it is a sign that it has had water intrusion issues on the bottom.
That's good to know.
The other thing that, just kind of things, make sure your sump pumps are plugged in. I mean, I've went to many houses before and the sump pump wasn't plugged in. Don't know why. I mean, it was usually a very fortunate thing that we weren't into a heavy rain, heavy groundwater saturation point where, I plug them in and they work. I would always recommend that if a sump pit has an open lid, that if it's got a float on it, try and just raise that float just to make sure that the pump engages. Now, I would not recommend doing it like I used to with a metal wire or anything that's conductive at all. You can take something like maybe a Swiffer handle that's got a fork in it and, just raise that plastic float. Now, not all sump pumps, the majority of them do have floats on them, but every once in a while, people install these sump pumps that require water pressure to activate them. And short of filling the pit, you're never going to know whether they work. Okay. The other thing I would encourage people to do is, maybe run the outside hose bibs to make sure they're working, not leaking. Run the water in the kitchen sink, the bathroom sinks, the tubs. Flush toilets, just take a peek underneath of the sinks, make sure when as things are draining, that they're draining properly and you don't have leaks there that you could bring to your customers' attention, maybe have fixed. And the other thing is just make sure that you have hot water to all your fixtures there, which would indicate that your water heater's leaking. And while you're down that utility room, it just wouldn't hurt to take a look at the water heater, make sure it's not leaking, especially if it's an older one. I've seen 6-month-old A.O. Smith water heaters leak on new construction. So whether it's newer or old, just take a peek at it.
Sure.
The other thing is make sure on that all your utilities are turned on. I mean, nothing is more aggravating to a home inspector or any other vendor that such as an appraiser, which they will charge you. They'll get paid. I never did have any luck going back after the fact, but just make sure utilities are on. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times over the course of 16 years I'd show up and the cheapest utility of all, water, would be shut off. Well, it's like, well, water is a very critical part of the home inspection. So you can test for supply leaks, all kinds of stuff. And I mean, I used to stay there and inspect part of the home and then come back once water was restored. But it just ended up taking darn near as much time. By the time you got to sit there and babysit a washer, if it stays, run a dishwasher. So make sure utilities are turned on. I mean, a lot of times when I would make that call, the agent would have no idea. And, it's not their fault. It wasn't my fault. People just do different things and don't communicate real well.
Yeah. I think those are both really good points too, when it comes to winterizing. One of the things that I've seen more frequently than not is the house gets too cold and you have a water line on the exterior wall and it freezes up if the house gets too cold.
Yeah. And I would never recommend any home that's got a high efficiency furnace turning that below 55 degrees. I had a house I inspected probably about 12 years ago, and the owner that lived there was a now retired Rockwell engineer at the time. He'd sold the property. He was leaving to go to Arizona, and he turned the doggone high efficiency furnace down to 45 degrees, which was probably the same thing he did for the 20 years he'd been going there. Well, guess what? It didn't heat enough, and subsequently, because of that, it froze up on the exhaust portion of the outside. And I think you know the rest of the story. When you can't exhaust, you can't run a furnace. And water froze. I mean, the whole interior of the house from the second floor down had to be redone. So I really felt sorry for my people that were buying it. I felt sorry for everybody that was involved in the process, because it's just wasn't a good thing. So, one thing that I would recommend as part of your preparation stuff, especially if you have an older furnace and a home is going to be vacant, I would recommend that thing be serviced before it's put on the market, just to try and alleviate that. The other thing, whether the home's vacant or not, wood burning fireplaces or wood stoves or that sort of stuff, those should, you're probably going to end up having to clean them anyway, because there's going to be either A, if it's a wood stove, the inspector isn't going to take it apart to see the flue, or B, if it's a fireplace. I mean, if there's debris in the firebox and debris in the chimney, I mean, they're going to get written up. So, those are two things I would be very proactive on personally. I've just seen those turn into real circuses at times when they become up as for remedy items. That's kind of the stuff I see on the inside of the home. Now, getting outside, I mean, there's a lot more things in my mind that are should be kind of looked at, and sellers should be coached on that. Number one thing is make sure that even if it's in a garage, all your hoses are disconnected from hose bibs, because water is the one property that, instead of contracting when it freezes, it expands. And if that hose is full of water and there's an like a spray nozzle on the end and that thing's full, as that freezes, that water is going to expand. And I would say probably 90% of the time, it's never going to hurt the hose, or it's never going to hurt that end. It's going to freeze. It's going to blow up the hose bib and cause problems in that regard. Yep. Another thing I think that, should be just kind of looked at, while you're looking at properties, or maybe somebody's there taking a picture on the outside, just take a look at all the exterior wires coming to the home. You don't see as much overhead power coming in as you used to, but I mean, power lines, cable lines, I mean, they should be secure. They should be clear of trees or other obstructions. Another big one for winter time is, make sure the gutters are clean, and proper downspout extensions are in place. Stand back a little bit, take a look at the roof, just see if you can see, debris that needs cleaned off of that. If there's any shingles that are missing, sometimes you can look at a masonry chimney from the ground and say, oh my, well, that's something that, if it's looking bad and it's something your seller doesn't want to do, well, exclude that, or whatever you do in your purchase agreement, that, it's an as is thing, so people know what they're getting into. Another thing that is a big one is overhead garage doors. There's a couple things on overhead garage doors. I mean, number one, make sure the door's traveling up and down and not banging and jerking. Make sure that when that door is open, that it's open to the full extent of the opening. Especially with, if it's a vacant property and winter coming on, if there, garage door gaskets on the bottom panel, most often they wear out over time, and anything you can fit a lead pencil, number 2 lead pencil in, a mouse could get in. So I would recommend that people have that gasket put on the door. Another tip for that gasket on the bottom of the door is, just from an opening and closing standpoint, when we get extreme cold in that, just take some cooking spray or something and grease that bottom seal. So if there's snow or ice that's built up there, it'll tend to pop up a lot easier than if that rubber gasket is frozen completely to the ground. And the other thing, make sure that snow is kept away from that garage door and any of your exterior doors you need to enter in that, just so things don't freeze up and break when the inspector or the appraiser or somebody else that shows up on that. And another thing you may just want to look at on an overhead garage door, on top of the structure, it would actually be the header portion of the door, the structural part. I would look for any staining on the top of that, or the bottom side of that header, and on the inside of that header, because what I've seen many times is what I think a lot of the problem with is from the way the industry is so specialized. Okay, so you'll have your framers there. They'll set your windows, your doors. They'll put your house wrap on. They'll put your tar paper and substrate, whatever you're going to put on your roof, to wait till the roofer and everybody else gets there. Well, the cider shows up, and instead of taking a knife and cutting that Tyvek where it meets the top of the garage door trim that's installed and pulling that house wrap back up, they'll install their siding J channel, and if they put a drip cap there, and if you don't have things set up in a watershed manner so that it runs down the house wrap and runs on the outside, hits the drip cap or the J channel, it runs off. You can get water intrusion in there. And I've seen garage doors so bad that I didn't even have to look for staining. The structural header was completely toast. And that's about a $3,000 fix. So that's just a big one to look for. As far as around the outside of the home, if you've got window wells and such, make sure the debris is removed from them. If it's fall time and you've got some real areas that have some negative surface grade where water is going to pool, you may suggest to your customers that maybe they throw some dirt and stuff there to create watershed away from the home. Because I've seen this only a couple times, and I forget what year it was. It happened on a couple places that had never, ever had water in them before. We had one of those winters where the ground was frozen. We didn't have a lot of snow cover, and we got some pretty extensive winter rains. And I mean rain. Well, water pooled in those areas along the foundation, and people have never had a water intrusion issue in their life. We're having water because the only place that water can go when it's sitting there pooled is between the ground that is contracted and pulled away from the foundation and right down that foundation. So that's another area I would definitely look at. You have a lot of homes that have an exterior entrance to a basement, and usually those are in the back or wherever they put them. A lot of times there's a floor drain there, and that area is open to it's open to debris. I would recommend that that be part of keeping the debris out of there. And if it's not cold and frozen, maybe dump a pitcher of water down that. Make sure that drain is working, because guarantee you, again, you get one of those winter rains and that drain will not operate. You will have water in the basement.
Absolutely.
Another thing, I know a lot of times people like to put mulch and stuff up, to make the outside more appealing. Just make sure you've got some sort of gap between your siding and that. Siding to soil or any sort of contact is just no. I mean, in a perfect world, the building industry wants clearance between siding and soil between 12 to 16 inches. Well, nobody does that because nobody wants an incline on their driveway. Nobody wants larger garage steps to get into their home, and nobody wants more than a step or two to get into their home. So
right.
That's something that, can be problematic again. And one thing, when winter time has arrived, and if that house is sitting there vacant, and we get some big snows, Somebody needs to clear the gas meter because there is a bleeder valve on that gas meter. And if that's froze up and it can't bleed, that can be very problematic as well.
Excellent. Hey, Mike, we have a question that just came in.
Yes.
Speaking of snow removal, can you talk a little bit about using melting salt with new concrete?
Oh, boy. I know I made some real fans of some builders due to that, which should have known better. Any concrete that's less than a year old, cured, I mean, if you got to use it, use it. Use it sparingly. And when it's done its job, get out there with a broom or a blower or something and get the excess out of it. Because a lot of our ice melts these days, it used to be back in the day, everything was a salt or sort of stuff mixture. Well, not a lot of them now are putting calcium chloride in there. And
Right.
calcium chloride is an inhibitor that speeds up concrete curing in the wintertime. Well, if that stuff is sitting there dry and it gets a little moisture, believe me, it's going to do its thing. It's going to pop. And usually what it's going to do, it's going to spoil the surface of new concrete. I'm not a big fan of ice melt, even on my driveway that's 30 years old. If I have to use it in a spot because we've got one of those winters, I mean, I get it off there immediately. So that was a very good question.
Excellent. Yeah, good to know. Thank you, Kayla, for that question. Well, Mike, I think that is about our time for today. Any last tidbits you want to leave us with today?
Yep. The last tidbit is my recommendation for after any vendor appointment at the home. I recommend that within that next day or that day, if possible, the listing agent or one of their associates or somebody go out there and take a look at that home. Because number one, the furnace shutoff switch gets turned on and off as part of the furnace testing, or a boiler. Knock on wood, I never left one off, but I know instances where that has happened. The other thing is the thermostat setting should be observed because I've gotten the phone calls because the appraiser or somebody else was in there and turned up the furnace way high, either because the house was a little cold and forgot to do it. So that got me into the habit of usually about my second or third picture once I walked inside the home was the thermostat setting. And it was the last picture on my photos when I was done. And that, so I may just make sure that the set points for where people want things are good. Just take a walk through, make sure somebody didn't leave water running. I mean, things happen. Sometimes it's out of carelessness. A lot of times it's just, sometimes people forget and we're all human. So that's really all I have for you in regard.
Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate your time this morning. And thanks again for giving us these tips. And that'll be it for us today. So
I forgot my disclaimer. Just remember, free advice is worth the price you pay for it. I'm joking.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I guess we'll hold you to that. I don't know, but thank you, Mike. And you have a great week, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
All right. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All righty. Bye-bye.